the night. We burn through the night.
Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolás Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. Don't play games with this president's in office because it's not going to turn out well.
We're going to take a moment to break down, well, the temper tantrums that you're seeing, because the same professional protesters who were screaming, "No kings," they're now chanting for the release of a dictator.
Maduro, free him now! Free Maduro! Free him now! Hands up Venezuela now! Hands up
And congressional Democrats, well, they don't sound like dissidents. They sound like they're straight out of Moscow.
Or at least waging a fight to win. He's here. And the president brags about his Venezuela policy? Give us a break. He hasn't brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began.
And that is that we have the War Powers Act. That's a privilege resolution, which means the Republicans can't block it. Tim Kaine and I and Rand Paul are sponsors of it. It's going to come to the floor this week. And if it is voted for, if it's voted positively in both houses, then the president can't do another thing in Venezuela without the okay of Congress.
And speaking of Moscow, Vladimir Putin over here crying aggression as if he isn't the same guy who over the last 20 years hasn't made the Russian invasion of the Ukraine so common it might as well be a family road trip to Yellowstone. That should pretty much give you everything you need to know, because the left isn't upset that something bad happened. They're upset that something worked, because while cable news panels are screaming imperialism on MS Now and CNN, the Venezuelan people, well, they're celebrating, and they're celebrating in the streets. And that's the part that they don't really want you to see, because here's what actually happened. The United States, they captured Nicolás Maduro in a daring nighttime raid inside of a fortified military base. The U.S., well, we flew in, we blew some stuff up, we arrested Maduro, his wife, put them in a helicopter, and got them out without losing a single American life, all in less time than it took for Will to come out during Stranger Things. It's pretty dope if you ask me. Meanwhile, the reaction, well, it split, and it split immediately. Outrage from Russia, outrage from Democrats, outrage from corporate, shill-happy media, relief from Venezuelan refugees and the people who actually lived underneath the regime. That contrast matters, because this didn't come out of nowhere. After 20 years of socialism, after 20 years of trying to crawl their way back, Venezuelans had democracy stolen from them in 2024. Opposition candidates, well, they were blocked from checking results. Then they were ultimately forced to flee. The vote was in question. The results were rushed, announced before votes were counted. People like to forget that too. And when that didn't really work, the regime won it even harder. Not only were opposition voices silenced, their families were threatened. Yes, their children imprisoned and used as leverage. Some of these children were forced to do unspeakable things just for food. The world saw it. Over 60 countries refused to recognize Maduro as legitimate. And the left, yeah, it saw it too, but they were too busy screaming "Orange Man bad" to pretend to care. And when elections are stolen, diplomacy fails, and suffering just keeps piling up, eventually things boil over. See, this just wasn't one bad year. Since Hugo Chavez to Maduro, Venezuela collapsed. Hyperinflation, mass poverty, food shortages, mass starvation, political imprisonments, and millions forced to flee. This wasn't a policy debate on how socialism wasn't properly applied. This was a case study in socialism's real world, real life misery. And here's the part that the media also likes to ignore, because they bend over backwards to avoid it. The Cartel of Sons. That's not a nickname. That is the name used by U.S. prosecutors to describe the high-ranking military officials inside of the regime accused of protecting cocaine shipments, controlling trafficking corridors, and giving cartels state protection. That is a narco-state. And guess what? On top of all this, Venezuela's location geographically mattered because it became a transit hub, a safe haven to shield traffickers, to shield those routes. And those routes didn't stop there. They helped feed the American opioid crisis. From 2012 to 2023, 900,000 Americans died from an overdose. In 2023, deaths hit above 110,000. That was 3 straight years in a row of overdose deaths above 110,000. By 2025, well, something miraculous happened. The deaths dropped to around 76,000. That is an over 30% reduction in overdose deaths. This did not happen by accident. It happened because cartel routes got hit. Transportation networks got disrupted, and safe passage wasn't so safe because if you're on a boat, you won't boom. Every shipment left a trail of grief. And this isn't some abstract foreign policy. This is American blood tied directly to narco states like Venezuela. Now, let's be clear. Maduro is no victim. He threatened armed resistance. He mobilized militias. He prepared for guerrilla warfare. He reveled in the chaos. This was the definition of an authoritarian regime daring the world to act. Now, let's look at the media's reaction to this, because the mainstream lapdog media, well, they question the morality without any context. No mention of a stolen election, no mention of the cartel violence and dominance, no actually speaking to the Venezuelan people. Their voices were silenced.
Yes, I come from Venezuela.
And you don't agree with any of these people here, right?
No, I'm not agree. I'm not agree with Trump because Trump helped to my country obtain the libertad.
Harris, AOC, the other squad members, including the brother Humper, that they wanted to say it was unlawful and unwise, dismissed it as regime change. One of them even said it was bullying. Here's the divide. See, the elites, their outrage is performative. And the media, well, it's leftist water carrying disguised as moral preening. Venezuelans, they spoke from anguish, and Americans, far too many Americans, spoke from their graves, a grave dug by fentanyl. So I guess to try to wrap this up, it brings me to a quote from Rush Limbaugh. See, Rush said liberals, well, they measure compassion by how weak they're willing to be. And conservatives measure compassion by whether something actually works. At the end of the day, weakness prolonged suffering, and the results changed the outcome. Ideology talks. Results say put up or shut up. And at the end of the day, reality keeps score. And guess what? The orange man just lit up the board again.
And now, if you don't know, now you know.
From the ink of the comics to the glow of the tube, every twist, every turn keeps us locked in the groove. TV's flashing neon, check the microphone. We're the speakers of subjects, the kings of the code. Raise the